Congratulations to Tyler Perry. Congratulations to Mr. Tyler Perry, who now owns BET and VH1. So, the conversation today, we're going to talk about now that he owns BET and VH1, specifically BET, it's time to rebrand. And the brand strategy that needs to take place is for him to rebrand. So that's what we're going to discuss. Before we get into it, imagine waking up and finding $3 billion in your bank account. Wouldn't that be a great feeling, right? What would you do with that money? I'm sure we all have a laundry list of things we would love to do. It was the year 2001, and founders Robert L. Johnson and Sheila Johnson sold BET for a whopping $3 billion to Viacom. Mr. Johnson got half, and his now ex-wife, Ms. Johnson, got half. $1.5 billion. That's billion with the B each. So what did he do? He founded and launched RLJ Companies, which is simply a holding company for a lot of his interests. We may get into that a little bit later this time. But the official name for BET is the Black Entertainment Television, LLC, DBA, BET Networks. So, and Viacom, one at a time, had also purchased CBS Entertainment Group a year before, right? And it's important to also mention that early 2022, Viacom became Paramount Global, right? So at the time when they purchased BET, it was Viacom, and then recently, now Paramount Global was who gave, not gave, but sold BET to Mr. Tyler Perry. So, and this is information we gathered from the Los Angeles Times and a few other news sources. So, but why am I mentioning all this? Well, you not heard, right? Allow me to officially say Mr. Tyler Perry has purchased BET. And I want to talk a little bit about the kind of brand strategy that needs to be implemented now that this acquisition has taken place, right? So, but I don't want to do just a news report, a reporting of the news, right? You can get to other places, but here we do talk about brand strategy. So that's what we're going to get into. So this is Strategy with Dr. M. Stolard. Hello, I am Dr. M. Stolard, Entrepreneurial Strategist, helping cultivate brand clarity for community organizations and those who want to create social impact, right? And we do this through strategy. And so Tyler Perry purchasing BET and VH1, in my opinion, is a significant social impact, right? When I first heard this, I actually only heard the fact that it was just BET. I didn't realize it was both. But it's truly amazing. I think it was about $400 million for both. And I figured we'll talk a little bit about the BET and VH1 acquisition. You know, this is super important because, you know, there's truly not that many African-American owners of TV networks. Obviously, the number is increasing, but there's not like a ton of them, right? He obviously was the best person for this responsibility. And it was my opinion, too. I think that there's a few people that were in the running, so to speak, that, you know, had their hat in the ring and they wanted to, I guess, own it. So if you did not know, I think it was Byron Allen was a consideration. Sean Diddy Combs, right? You know, he's owner of Bad Boy Records, right? So they're also in the running. I believe Shaquille O'Neal, maybe Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, whose book I'm currently reading, by the way, was also in consideration, right? So here's some of the highlights. BET, around the year 2000, had reached about 90 million hosts, was reaching 90 million households at that time, you know? So and remember, this is before streaming became so popular, right? So in my opinion, Mr. Tyler Perry was probably the best choice of everyone that was considered to make this purchase. You know, he had a relationship with them. His shows are already on the network, or at least BET Plus already, if I'm not mistaken, you know? So what happens next, right? In my opinion, a complete rebrand needs to take place. They need an all-new brand strategy that repositions both BET and VH1. BET historically has been a Black entertainment channel, right? Hence the name, right? Black Entertainment Television. It had Black news back way before Roland Martin went digital. If you know the name Jackie Reed, she used to do the news. It was the BET Nightly News. You know, she's since moved on to do other great things, but seeing her she was a person that was seen as a professional, you know. She also had a kind of a different look at the time. When you looked at news anchors around that time, you know, she had short hair, where a lot of times news anchors might have been long hair. That's just the truth, right? At least the African-American female news anchors had just long hair consistently across the board. Some may have even been a little bit lighter skinned. I think it was a Tanya Cook from KXN in Austin. She might have been a little darker skinned, but she also had long hair. You know, and I'm not trying to get into the complex thing. I'm just saying that there was like a consistent standard, there was a consistent look across most news outlets. But BET Nightly News and BET had a different look, and Jackie Reed was the kind of the face of that. So, you know, in the 2000s, Halle Berry was one of the few people along with Jackie Reed that actually rocked the short hair, right? And I'm just trying to give you a little time reference. You know, in 2000, Halle Berry was playing Storm in the movie X-Men, right? She did the movie Swordfish, is one of my favorite movies. There is a computer coding hacking scene. Those of you who have an IT background, I still have a love. Sometimes it's a love-hate, but it's a love for the information technology field, right? So there's an amazing computer hacking machine that's extremely popular amongst a lot of techies. You know, a lot of techies could appreciate that scene. There's some other scenes in the movie that featured Miss Halle Berry, but I won't digress. But if you've seen the movie, then you may know what I'm referring to. But let's not digress more than I have, right? So there's BET and VH1, and we're going to focus strictly on BET. And maybe we'll do VH1 later on if that's something you're interested in. But this episode strictly on BET. So let's get into it. You know, I will say that VH1 back in the day was a video music channel, right? And it was like you had MTV, then you had VH1 that kind of played a little bit softer music, right? So if you weren't even an MTV fan, then a lot of people went to like VH1, you know. But VH1 started having a lot of reality shows and so forth, and so VH1 saving grace at the time, at least viewership wise, was the infamous or famous, depending on how you look at it, Flavor of Love, right? Starring rap legend Flavor Flav from the group Public Enemy, right? And we can discuss the branding that took place during that time another time, but that's kind of what was going on. But for now, BET, Black Entertainment Television, right? BET also had shows like 106 & Park starring AJ and Free, which ended in 2005, which is a monumental and a very emotional episode if you hadn't seen it, because they were the host for a very, very, very long time. There was also Video Gospel, right? There was a show called Teen Summit, right? It was a popular show, and this ended around 2002. And I'm just trying to give you a little time frame of what was kind of going on at the time. The main host of the show at the time was Ananda Lewis. Then you have Comic View, which ended around 2008. There was an iconic show that really kept the audience engaged, you know. And so, you know, Comic View was just lots of comedians and so forth. And so they had like Def Comedy Jam on HBO, they had like the Comic View, which was on BET. And so if you hadn't checked out some of the old school, opportunity to check out some of the old school Comic View episode, you should. There's gonna be a lot of faces you probably recognize, right? That people have blown up and so forth, right? But to me, BET started changing when the late night shows. It did a late night music show entitled BET Uncut, right? It launched in the year 2000, and it did last 6 years, but it changed kind of the overall brand for me, in my opinion, of the network. And I was obviously young at the time, but I definitely kind of changed the overall professionalism, because really, when you thought about BET, you thought about class, you thought about Black excellence, you know, and a lot had shifted after Bob Johnson sold it, in my opinion, you know? So what needs to happen, right? So now that BET has been purchased by Tyler Perry, it needs to reposition itself, right? With a new brand strategy. And just so we can all be on the same page, brand strategy is a specific plan of action to build a reputation, or influence a result of an organization or a business in a positive light. And I'll kind of say this again. And I like to do definitions because it allows us to all be on the same page, right? So when I'm talking about brand strategy, I'm talking about a specific plan of action to build a reputation, right? In some cases, you're rebuilding it, right? Or to influence, a certain result of an organization or business in a positive light. It's always want to be in a positive light. So we want to see BT maybe to kind of get back some of the Black excellence that it once had, and then also move forward, right? So I have about maybe eight possible items or suggestions BET should do moving forward, right? And so we define brand strategy, and that allows us to start in the same place. But the first thing, and this is what you want to do whenever you take over a brand. So this will also be a lesson for our audience as well. But you're going to want to reintroduce yourself to the audience, right? Tyler Perry is a brand in itself, and in the same way that Steve Jobs was loved by those who used Apple products, right? There are a lot of people who could love BT networks again, So in this particular case, you want to reintroduce myself, right? Allow me to introduce myself. My name is, right, if you know that song by Jay-Z. So I think that's an important percent to kind of be able to start off fresh, right? And these are not necessarily suggestions 1 through 8. You could, it may be possible to do a couple of these. Some of these you could end up doing all of them. But I think these are going to be beneficial for the BET moving forward, right? BET definitely needs to reposition itself. Right? BET definitely needs to reposition itself. Repositioning is a crucial part of a brand strategy. Repositioning means to intentionally change the direction and to intentionally change the perception of you or your business. This is something I have talked about often. It can't just jump in the middle of a bunch of TV networks and say, here I am, without saying who you are, right? You need to clearly articulate where you are, how you're positioning. This TV brand is going to be positioned, this network is going to be positioned, and where you feel this particular brand should sit as compared to the others, should it be strictly a news channel, for example, right? That means you're going to compete with CNN or Fox News, and that's where you can position yourself. Are you going to position yourself for more of a general network, or what's known as a commercial network, where you're competing with like ABC or NBC? You're going to have lots of different types of TV shows, that could be something as well. This could be, it can be dangerous because the audience is usually considered general. And I believe we are in an area where but even with TV, there should be some type of niche or direction, right? There should be some specific niche or direction. So if you're too broad or too general, then sometimes it makes it difficult for people to say, align with you. And so it has been proven time again that you don't necessarily need, let's be clear. In TV and networks and so forth, they do want a lot of views, a lot of eyes. However, part of that, if you find your core niche, right? And you've seen it time and time again with politics, with businesses and so you find a core group of people that truly love and support your brand and your product and so forth, right? On a smaller scale, I say this time and time again, you find 100 people that's willing to pay you $99 for your service. You know what I mean? That's you allow to run your own business. You finding 1,000 people that pay you $45 or $47 a month for a product or service. Now you've put yourself in a totally different position, and so I think it's going to be important for BT to definitely rebrand itself, but really try to find its core audience, right? And what that looks like. I believe we are in an area where TV, there should be, even though where maybe TV may not be as popular because everything's about streaming, or it feels that way anyway. But I think you want to find your niche or your direction. This is how WB and CW networks were able to get off the ground, right? By giving, at least initially, to a specific audience, So, we can explore and understand, you'll be able to explore and understand the pain points and the possible challenges for a core audience. This helps to better understand what is actually going on and maybe not going on, for those people who are wanting to be serviced that may not be serviced. Tyler Perry has a core audience to begin with, and that's how he's made his millions and billions, So the question is he going to continue to support that same audience, or is he going to find a totally different audience? You used to talk about Old Spice a lot, where they had a core audience for a long, long time. And the audience got to a point where they were literally, quote unquote, no longer existing anymore. Right. And so they had to come up with a way to find a whole new crop of people. So they had to target a younger audience, So next, the third thing they can do nothing, right? Just let it see what happens. Do nothing, just kind of continue what you're doing as is. Maybe collect a check and so forth. Maybe the popularity and the excitement just because of a new purchase may generate some excitement and so forth. You could potentially do nothing. That's not necessarily my best advice, but that's a possibility. I think if you do nothing, you'll probably get nothing in return eventually, But one thing you're going to have to be aware of is that BET will have to compete with their own network. Not that there's not enough room for both networks, but you're going to have to compete, right? Oprah and, Tyler Perry are supposedly friends or at least business associates. But he has to be aware that that's some of that audience, some of that core audience for own network is also could be potentially some of BET's network if they're not already. No, it is possible to try and play nice, but this doesn't always work. I'm not saying play dirty by any means, but you need to be aware that there's competition. There is room for more than one network. Because we see, there's a ton of networks out there that live side by side, but you know what? If you want to at least bring back the class that BET once had, you're gonna have to upscale the programming, to not have shows like College Hill, which in my opinion was just not that great or good for the brand. And yeah, not that good and great for the brand, So be prepared to compete. That's the key. Prepare to compete. So number 5, you're going to want to speak with the current viewers, right? Ask them what they want. That's probably the biggest thing. You want to ask what they want. You want to interpret that information that they're giving you, right? Do they feel like they're being heard? Are they getting programs that they actually truly want? Do they want something else? And I'm saying BT class, you know what I mean? I may be a little bit older audience. So maybe the majority of the audience, people who are watching BT, may not even be the ones that are currently watching it. Maybe it's a younger audience, right? But the point is, whoever current viewers are, talk to them, see what they want, And then the subcategories of people who are familiar with BET already, what would they like to see? Talk to them and see if there's a way to kind of touch on both to give people what they need to start building an audience again, a core audience, right? You know what? BET has an amazing brand story, right? It has a very historical brand story. I kind of shared some of it with you in the beginning, and I think that would be something key and necessary to include as part of the brand strategy. Use it to reintroduce the world, to get the attention of different folks, so you can help potentially move forward. That would be the 6th suggestion. Number 7 is to just develop stronger content, that appeals to the core audience of BET, right? That appeals to the core audience of BET. And then number 8, and this is my last suggestion. This might be a little extensive. You want to get a clear understanding of who the ideal viewer is, who the ideal BET viewer is. The ideal viewer, BET viewer, and consumer, and rebrand the network for them. The intention should always be to learn as much as possible about your ideal customer, so you can provide a personalized service, personalized network, it's with relevant content, and helpful sales information as well. Because you got to be able to, you're going to have run commercials. That's also key. And some of that is creating a specific and detailed viewer persona, right? A viewer persona. Think about who your ideal consumer could be. It's a singular person. Think of it as a singular person you want to ask yourself certain questions. I'm not going to go into it all with you, but some of the things Mr. Tyler Perry is going to want to know is, what is the age group? Right? What is the age group of the people who are currently BET watchers? Right? What's their highest level of education? The reason why that's important is because you want to make sure you're using appropriate language. If coincidentally 99% of the viewers were medical professionals, then you're going to want to have more medical shows. But not just medical shows, you want to be able to talk that medical language, which, that they would be easily be able to understand. That's just an example. Do they work in a particular industry? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But you want to find out, you want to ask, right? Are they self-employed? Are they in college? Do you have a job? These are questions you want to ask for yourself too. If you're running a business or an organization and you're trying to develop a persona, whether you're talking about people who donate money to your organization, whether it's the people you serve, these are the kind of questions you want to develop as well. You want to use these questions to help develop that particular persona. What's the size of the organization that they work at? What is their job title? When they're having a good day, what that looks like. What does that look like? And it's also important for BET, right? If people come home from a hard work day, what do they want to see when it's time for them to relax? Sports can be a little bit expensive, so they may or may not be able to compete in the sports network, but you never know. Maybe there's a possibility to put on some more HBCU events or HBCU sporting events, right? So these are just some things to kind of think about as you kind of finish up, as you think about the rebranding that needs to take place when it comes to BET. I think this is a great opportunity for Mr. Tyler Perry. And if he's able to be successful, not just in the next year or two, but 5-10 years from now, he would definitely, even though he's already solidified himself, it's going to be even do more so for him, So that's pretty much what I have for today. Lastly, before that, think about partnerships. What kind of partnerships as part of the brand strategy does BET want to work with, right? Is he going to work with himself with his movies, or is he with some other company? If he works with a totally different company, then that's going to take off some of the heavy lifting he's already participating in, right? So anyway, those are my thoughts about 8 potential things that BET, now that they've been acquired by Mr. Tyler Perry, that they need to do to kind of rebrand themselves, reposition themselves, okay? So that's all we have for you today. I'm Dr. M. Stolard, and remember to keep pushing forward, to drive your influence, and be intentional by using strategy.